Wind screeched across the fjord, lashing black curls about the boy's face as he crouched at the water's edge. Brynjar pressed a trembling palm to a stone slick with icy spray, the world in mourning, sky and earth alike draped in gray. The village of Skelvik behind him lay silent. Now only shadows and smoke. The huts leaned toward one another as if sharing secrets of their shared sorrow. Brynjar, come away. The voice was gentle, brittle as autumn birch bark. It was Sigrun, his mother's sister, whose arms had become his shelter since the raiders came. Her steps left no mark on the frost, and her face bore new lines each dawn. He did not turn. His reflection, shattered by the current, stared up at him from the fjord's glassy surface. Two eyes, wide and unblinking. Brynjar's mind danced with fragments. The harrowed screams, the fire licking at woven thatch, father's silhouette in the doorway, sword drawn but fate already written. Why did the gods not answer? His voice was thin, nearly lost to the waves. Sigrun knelt beside him, the cold biting through deerskin as she gathered him close. The gods listen in silence, she murmured, gazing out across the sea where the sun drowned each night. Sometimes their answer is not the one we hope for. Brynjar watched a gull wheel overhead, its sharp cry colder than the wind. He wondered if it was Odin's own raven, come to take news of Skelvik's fall to Asgard. His small hands clenched into fists, knuckles pale. Then let them know I am still here, he whispered, so softly only the sea could hear. Let them know I remember. As darkness spread from the horizon, Brynjar told himself the old stories. How Thor's hammer could break worlds, how Freya wept golden tears for her lost lover, how the dead crossed the rainbow bridge to halls unknown. But none of these tales told him how to carry a grief so heavy it pulled the breath from his chest. That night, as the rest of the village huddled in the hall lit by embers and the howl of stories left untold, Brynjar slipped away to the burial mounds. Here lay the honored dead of Skelvik, farmers, fishers, warriors, and dreamers, woven into the earth, their names remembered in rune and song. He knelt at the newest mound, hands pressed to the frozen soil. No stone marked this grave. It was his alone to remember. Vilda, he murmured, the name raw. Sister, where are you now? Did the Valkyries find you? A sudden gust scattered snow across the mound, and for a heartbeat Brynjar thought he heard singing, distant and faint. He closed his eyes, searching for the melody, aching, beautiful, woven with longing. He would seek the answer among the gods themselves, if need be, to find Vilda, to understand why Skelvik had been left to burn. In the morning, when frost jeweled the reeds, Brynjar cast his last look back at the village before setting down the broken trail to the mountains, footsteps marking his path, alone but for memories and the promise that even the gods could not hide forever. The mountain path wound upward like a serpent's spine, each step carrying Brynjar further from the world he knew. 3 days had passed since he left Skelvik's ashes behind, and the boy's breath came in white puffs that dissolved into the thin air. His leather satchel, heavy with dried fish and hardtack from Sigrun's stores, bumped against his hip with each stride. Snow began to fall as he climbed, fat flakes that clung to his woolen cloak and gathered in the creases of his boots. The silence here was different from the fjords, deeper, older, as if the mountains themselves held their breath. Brynjar paused at a bend in the trail, looking back toward the valley. Skelvik was lost to distance and mist, but he could still smell smoke on the wind. A raven landed on a boulder ahead, its black eyes fixed on him with unsettling intelligence. It cocked its head and spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Young walker, where do your feet carry you?" Brynjar's hand moved instinctively to the iron pendant at his throat, a gift from his father, shaped like Mjolnir. "To find answers," he said, surprised at his own boldness. "To find my sister." The raven preened a wing feather with casual indifference. "The dead walk many roads, boy. Some lead to golden halls, others to mist and shadow. Which road calls to you?" "Whichever one she took." A harsh laugh echoed from the bird's throat. Brave words from one so small. But the mountains care nothing for courage, and the gods less for mortal grief. The raven spread its wings, each feather edged with silver light. "Turn back, Brynjar Eriksson. Let the dead rest." "How do you know my name?" But the raven was already airborne, its cry fading into the wind. Brynjar watched until it vanished among the peaks, then pressed on. The snow fell harder now, and the path grew treacherous with ice. More than once he slipped, catching himself on jutting rocks that left his palms bloody and raw. As dusk painted the sky in shades of iron and amber, he found shelter in a shallow cave carved from the mountainside. Ancient runes covered the walls, their meaning lost to time, but their presence spoke of others who had walked this path before him. Brynjar gathered dry wood from a stunted pine and coaxed a small fire to life with flint and steel. The flames cast dancing shadows on the cave walls, and in their movement he saw faces. His mother spinning wool by the hearth, his father sharpening his seeks, Vilda weaving flowers into her golden hair. The memory brought tears that froze on his cheeks before they could fall. "Why did you have to be so brave?" he whispered to the darkness. "Why couldn't you just hide?" But he knew the answer. Vilda had always been the fierce one, quick to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. When the raiders burst into their hall, she had placed herself between them and the children huddled in the corner. Her sacrifice had saved 3 lives, but the cost. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of burning ships and Valkyries with bloody spears. He woke to find frost coating his hair and a figure seated across the dying fire. An old woman, bent with age, her eyes like chips of winter sky. She wore a cloak of raven feathers that seemed to absorb the firelight. "You dream of war and loss, young one," she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Such dreams are heavy burdens for shoulders so young." Brynjar sat up slowly, his hand on his knife hilt. "Who are you?" "I am Grimhild, keeper of forgotten paths. And you are far from home, seeking what cannot be found." She stirred the coals with a gnarled staff, and sparks rose like tiny stars. "Tell me, boy, what do you know of the 9 worlds?" "The stories say they're connected by Yggdrasil, the world tree. Asgard for the gods, Midgard for men, Helheim for the dead." "Stories." Grimhild spat into the fire, making it hiss. "Stories are shadows of truth, and shadows lie. The worlds bleed into one another at the edges, where few dare to walk. Your sister, she did not take the golden road to Valhalla." Brynjar's heart clenched. "What do you mean?" "The raiders who burned your village bore the mark of the Draugr-King, a spirit of malice who commands the restless dead. Those who fall to his servants do not find peace in Odin's hall. They are bound to his service, trapped between life and death." "That's impossible." Vilda was pure of heart. "The Valkyries would have." "The Valkyries see only what they choose to see," Grimhild interrupted. "And they do not venture into the Shadow Realm where the Draugr-King holds court." She leaned forward, her ancient face etched with pity. "Your sister is lost, boy. Lost and bound in chains of bone and sorrow." Rage flared in Brynjar's chest, hot and bright. "Then I'll break those chains. I'll find her and bring her home." Grimhild was silent for a long moment, studying him with those winter eyes. Finally, she nodded. "Perhaps. The young often succeed where the wise fear to try. But know this, the path you seek leads through realms where mortal flesh was never meant to walk. You will face trials that would break grown warriors, and at the end," she shook her head, "at the end, you may wish you had listened to the raven's warning." She reached into her cloak and withdrew a small leather pouch, pressing it into his hands. "Mistletoe seeds," she said, "gathered from the sacred groves at the world's edge. They will light your way in the darkest places and protect you from the hungry dead. Use them wisely. I have no more to give." When Brynjar looked up from the pouch, the old woman was gone. Only the scent of juniper and grave earth remained, fading with the last of the fire. He sat alone until dawn, turning the pouch over in his hands, feeling the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders like a burial shroud. The sun rose pale and distant, offering little warmth as he resumed his climb. The path grew narrower, winding between peaks that scraped the belly of the sky. And somewhere ahead, in the spaces between worlds, his sister waited in chains of shadow and bone. Brynjar pulled his cloak tight and walked on, each step carrying him further from the world of the living and deeper into the realm of myths and nightmares. For 7 days Brynjar climbed through landscapes that grew stranger with each passing hour. The trees here were twisted things, their bark black as charcoal and their leaves the color of dried blood. No birds sang in their branches, and the only sound was the whisper of wind through stone and the crunch of frost beneath his feet. On the 8th day, he came to a place where the world seemed to fold in upon itself. A great chasm yawned before him, so deep that its bottom was lost in eternal shadow. Across the gulf, perhaps 100 paces distant, the path continued on a ledge of ice-covered rock. Between them stretched nothing but empty air and the promise of a fall that would never end. Brynjar sank to his knees at the precipice's edge, despair weighing heavier than his pack. His supplies were nearly gone, his strength failing, and now this, an impossible crossing that mocked his determination. He closed his eyes and felt hot tears freeze on his cheeks. "Vilda," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I can't." "Cannot what, young wanderer?" The voice was neither male nor female, ancient as glacier ice and sharp as winter wind. Brynjar opened his eyes to find a figure standing beside him, tall and wrapped in a cloak that seemed woven from the aurora itself, green and gold and silver, shifting like captured starlight. The being's face was beautiful and terrible, with eyes like holes in the world and skin pale as bone. When it smiled, Brynjar glimpsed teeth like icicles, sharp and gleaming. "I am Verelder, guardian of thresholds, keeper of passages between. You stand at the boundary of your world and mine, mortal child. Few of your kind have walked so far from the warmth of hearth fire." "I seek the Shadow Realm," Brynjar said, struggling to his feet. His voice cracked with exhaustion, but his resolve remained firm. "I seek the Draugr-King and my sister who is bound to him." Verelder laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Bold words. But words will not carry you across this chasm, nor will they protect you in the lands beyond. Tell me, boy, what will you offer for safe passage?" Brynjar's hand went to the iron pendant at his throat, then to the small eating knife at his belt, finally to the pouch of mistletoe seeds Grimhild had given him. "All precious, all necessary for the trials ahead. I have little to give," he said finally, "but I offer what I can." "Keep your trinkets," Verelder said with dismissive wave. "What I require cannot be held in mortal hands." The guardian's terrible eyes fixed on Brynjar's face. "I would have a memory, child. One memory, freely given, to add to my collection. Choose wisely, for once given, it will be lost to you forever." Brynjar's mind raced. His memories were all he had left of his family, his home, his life before the burning. To lose even one would be like losing a piece of his soul. "But Vilda, I'll give you the memory of her laughter," he said quietly. "My sister's laughter on the morning before the raiders came. She was teaching the village children to weave fishing nets, and young ORM kept tangling the cords. She laughed so hard she fell backwards into the grass, and her joy was like sunlight on water." The words tore at his heart as he spoke them, for already the memory was fading, becoming distant and gray. Verelder reached out with one pale hand and touched Brynjar's forehead. The boy felt something precious slip away, leaving behind only empty space where warmth had been. "A fair trade," Verelder murmured, and the guardian's terrible face softened almost imperceptibly. "Your love runs deeper than most mortals can fathom, perhaps deep enough to succeed where others have failed." The chasm began to change. Ice formed across its width, crystal clear and strong as iron, creating a bridge that sparkled in the strange half-light. But as Brynjar stepped onto its surface, Verelder spoke one last warning. "Know this, young seeker. Each world you enter will demand its own price. And the Shadow Realm demands the highest price of all. When you face the Draugr-King, remember, the dead hunger most for what they have lost. Your love may be your greatest weapon, or your ultimate doom." The bridge held beneath Brynjar's feet, though he could see the abyss yawning beneath the transparent ice. Step by careful step, he crossed into the realm beyond, feeling the air grow colder and stranger with each pace. When he reached the far side and looked back, both Verelder and the bridge had vanished, leaving only empty sky where they had been. The path ahead wound through a forest of silver trees whose leaves chimed like bells in the wind. Their music was haunting, beautiful and mournful, speaking of loss and longing in a language older than words. As Brynjar walked deeper into this otherworldly wood, he began to see shapes moving between the trees, pale figures that drifted like mist, always at the edge of vision. By evening, he had reached a clearing where a small stream bubbled up from underground springs. The water was crystal clear, but tasted of minerals and darkness. As he knelt to fill his water skin, a voice spoke from behind him. Another seeker walks the hidden paths. Brynjar spun around to find a young man sitting on a fallen log, perhaps 20 summers old, with auburn hair and sad green eyes. He wore the clothes of a warrior, mail shirt, sword at his side, shield bearing the device of a rowan tree. But there was something insubstantial about him, as if he were made of moonlight and memory. "I am Hakon Rowan's son," the figure said. "I died in battle 3 winters past, cut down by Saxon spears while defending my lord's hall. But I could not rest, for my brother Finn was captured in that fight, enslaved by raiders from the eastern seas. I sought him in the Shadow Realm, as you seek your sister." "Did you find him?" Brynjar asked, though something in Hakon's expression already told him the answer. The ghost warrior shook his head slowly. "I found only chains forged from my own guilt and sorrow. The Draugr-King feeds on such emotions, boy. He makes the dead into his servants by binding them with their deepest regrets. My brother." Hakon's voice broke. "My brother became something twisted, a hunger-given form. When I refused to join the Draugr-King's army, he set Finn upon me. I was forced to destroy what remained of the one I loved most." Horror crept up Brynjar's spine like ice. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying turn back," Hakon replied urgently, "before you lose more than memory to this quest. The Shadow Realm changes all who enter it. Your sister, if she still exists, may not be the girl you remember. And if you face the choice I faced—" "I won't turn back," Brynjar said firmly, though his voice trembled. "I can't. She's all I have left." Hakon studied him for a long moment, then nodded sadly. "I said the same words once. Perhaps your love will prove stronger than mine." The ghost reached into his belt and drew forth a small silver horn, no longer than a man's hand. "Take this. It was my grandfather's, blessed by the priests of Thor. Blow it only in your darkest hour, when hope has fled and death seems certain. It may buy you one last chance, though what you do with that chance will be yours to choose." Brynjar accepted the horn with reverent hands. It was surprisingly warm to the touch, and he could feel power thrumming within the silver like a caged heartbeat. "Thank you," he whispered. But when he looked up, Hakon was gone, dissolved into mist and starlight. Only the horn remained, solid and real in Brynjar's hands, proof that the encounter had been more than dream. As the strange stars of this other world emerged in the darkening sky, Brynjar made his camp beside the singing stream. The silver trees chimed their lamentations through the night, and in their music he heard the voices of all who had walked this path before him. Seekers and warriors, lovers and mourners, all drawn by love or duty into realms where mortal feet were never meant to tread. Tomorrow he would continue deeper into the Shadow Realm, toward whatever remained of his sister and the ancient evil that held her captive. Tonight, he held vigil beneath alien stars, clutching a dead man's horn and dreaming of golden laughter that was no longer his to remember. The forest sang its sorrows until dawn, and Brynjar listened, learning the language of loss that would serve him in the trials to come. The next day dawned thin and cold, the light strange, filtered through the silver canopy. Brynjar felt the loss of his treasured memory as a hollow ache, yet he pressed onward, crossing woods that whispered with the voices of the lost. The silver trees thinned, giving way to a field of standing stones, carved with runes whose meaning prickled in his mind like half-remembered dreams. Stepping between the stones, Brynjar whispered a blessing over each, recalling Sigrun's words, "Leave gifts for the wandering dead, and they may leave you peace." He placed a few crumbs of bread on a flat altar and muttered a quiet thanks. The air shifted, and for a heartbeat, the wind sounded not like sorrow, but gentle gratitude. Beyond the stones, a river coiled, black and wide, slower than any he had known in life. This was no water of Midgard, but a border river, Joel. Its name came to him in a shiver, the same that flowed along the edge of Helheim. There was no bridge, only a shallow deep ford, rimmed with ice. Brynjar steeled himself and stepped into the current. At first, the river was frigid, cutting like knives. Midway across, the cold seeped deeper. His legs went numb, every joint ached. Shapes swirled beneath the surface, faces thin and pale with longing, hands reaching through the water. He forced himself not to look down, clutching the silver horn. On the far bank, he fell to his knees, shuddering and soaked. He coughed river water from his lungs, tasting ashes and tears. The landscape here was barren, moonlit wasteland. Bones of ancient beasts jutted from the soil, and the sky overhead crawled with slow-moving auroras. A voice echoed, not in his ears, but in his thoughts. "You come, living child, through the gates of sorrow. Do you know what you seek?" Brynjar struggled to stand. "I seek Vilda, my sister, and I seek an end to your torment of the dead." The ground before him split, frost racing from the crack. Out of the icy gap rose a figure tall as a pine and clad in rotted finery. A crown of bone, a cloak of grave dust, eyes like pits in a moonless night. The Draugr-King towered, every inch formed of longing, fury, and unhealed wounds. "You carry love like a torch," the Draugr-King rumbled, voice ringing like frost on iron. "But the dead are not set free by love. They are bound by it." Behind the king, shadow shapes clustered, hundreds of them, their eyes hollow, all held upright by chains that bid into memories. Among them, one figure stepped forward, smaller than the rest, her hair a pale veil. "Brynjar?" Her voice was uncertain, as if spoken through ice. "Vilda." The boy surged forward, tears blurring the nightmare shapes. But a length of chains stretched between her hands, shackles of sorrow binding her spirit. "Do not forget," whispered the king. "To free her, you must take her chains upon yourself." Brynjar looked at his sister, at her trembling lips and the shadow of pain in her gaze. If he took her chains, would he, too, be bound forever to this bleak domain? His heart screamed, but he remembered what Grimhild had told him. The path of love was peril and sacrifice in equal measure. He drew out the pouch of mistletoe seeds and scattered them at Vilda's feet, whispering the blessing Grimhild had taught him. They sprouted instantly, twining up the chains with shoots of green. Light flared, dazzling in the darkness. The Draugr-King recoiled, shrieking as the green fire crept up his skeletal arms. Vilda stumbled free, her chains slipping away. "Brynjar, run!" she cried. But Brynjar hesitated, turning the silver horn in his hand. He raised it and blew a single, ringing note. The sound cut through the night, a call to arms, to hope, and to memory. From the stones and wastes, shades rose, warriors, mothers, brothers, children, all those bound here by unfinished love. The Draugr-King struggled to hold them, but their chains crumbled, broken by the boy's courage and the echo of lost laughter. As the aurora blazed above, Vilda reached for Brynjar, pulling him from the Shadow Realm's cold grasp. The land shuddered, breaking apart as the Draugr-King screamed and was swept away in a maelstrom of wind and light. The siblings fell through the void, tumbling end over end in a world gone to storm and stars. When Brynjar opened his eyes again, he was lying on the mountain pass, Vilda's hand in his. Above, the true dawn broke red and gold, warm as home. They wept together, not only for the wounds behind them, but for the world regained. Every cost had been paid, every chain broken. Skelvik would remember, the gods would know, and love, frail and fierce, had carried them through death's own shadow, back into the light. The saga of Brynjar and Vilda was only beginning, but now it would be a tale of hope rebuilt from sorrow, sung wherever hearts longed for reunion, and courage was measured not in blood, but in sacrifice. The world was changed. Brynjar and Vilda stood at the broken edge of the mountain pass, breath mingling in the cold, awash in a light that felt cleansed and new. Yet deep within Brynjar's heart, an ache remained, a warning that the journey was not yet done, that what had been set in motion would not rest with a single battle won. They traveled together now, tracing their way down toward Skelvik. Vilda, though free, was quieter than she had ever been. Sometimes Brynjar would catch her staring at the horizon, lips moving with words she did not speak. At night, she dreamed uneasily, waking with cries that faded into the dark. On the third evening, they came upon a circle of ash trees famed for old magic. Here the ground throbbed with energy, and the wind whispered names from before memory. Brynjar felt the air shiver, and when they made camp he asked softly, "Vilda, what happened in the Shadow Realm?" She was silent for so long Brynjar thought she might never answer. But finally, she turned to him, eyes etched with sorrow and wisdom. "There are things the dead see, she whispered. Things even the gods refuse to speak. I saw the roots of Yggdrasil, and in them, I saw the fates of those I loved, their joys and regrets braided into the fabric of the world. What did you see for us? Vilda hesitated, voice barely a thread. I saw you, alone and grieving for years, unable to let go. I saw myself, bound by bitterness, echoing the sorrow of the Draugr-King. But something changed. A choice, unexpected and bright against the dark. You would not abandon me, even when fate demanded it. Brynjar reached for her hand. You're not alone now. We'll find a way forward. A hush settled around them, the trees bending inward like guardians. As sleep claimed them, dreams overtook Brynjar. Visions of a mighty hall ablaze with golden light, warriors feasting, gods whispering in secret. Upon a throne sat a woman crowned with ice and fire, her face both lovely and terrible. You have changed the story, she intoned, her voice weaving through Brynjar's bones. But fate finds new roads for those who live boldly. He woke at dawn to find Vilda already awake, watching a raven trace circles in the pale sky. They broke camp and followed the river, the land growing richer with every step, berries ripening in their path, fish darting in clear water, birds singing songs brighter than before. By noon, they reached a place where the forest gave way to ancient stones and the remains of an old settlement. A solitary figure waited beside a broken hearth, a man of 30 winters, broad-shouldered, hair braided in the fashion of distant trade routes. He bore no weapons, only a satchel stitched with patterns neither Brynjar nor Vilda recognized. "Welcome, travelers," the man said, his voice sonorous and kind. "I am Eilif Skainson, called the Keeper of Crossroads." Vilda stepped forward, her posture wary but her eyes clear. "Why do you wait here, Eilif?" He gestured toward the stones. "All journeys end or begin at a crossroads. Some are literal, some are woven with destiny. Yours, I think, have changed the world, though you may not yet see the strands you have woven." Brynjar frowned, clutching the silver horn. "We only followed sorrow and love." Eilif smiled, lines crinkling around his eyes. But what you did has shaken the roots of Yggdrasil. The Draugr-King is not only gone, his chain on the souls of this land is broken, and you have awakened old gods, roused sleeping powers. Now, others shall come, seeking the torch you lit for the lost." Vilda nodded. "Are you one of them?" Eilif did not answer immediately. Instead, he opened his satchel and drew forth a small runestone, carved in unrecognizable shapes. Heroes are not forged by battles alone. They are forged by choices, sacrifice, and mercy. You brought mercy to the restless dead. He pressed the stone into Brynjar's hand. "When the Hall of the Gods calls your names, remember this gift. It binds courage and compassion, hallmarks of those who change fate." All around, the air shimmered, rich with promise. Eilif faded into the sunlight, leaving Brynjar and Vilda to walk forward, hearts heavy but unbroken. As darkness approached, they found a new path, winding, wild, and glorious with possibility. Skelvik itself, rebuilt from ruin, awaited just beyond a veil of trees. Children's laughter floated on the breeze. The old tales would soon welcome a new saga, sung beneath stars both old and newly kind. So Brynjar and Vilda's journey continued, not as victims of loss, nor ghosts bound in sorrow, but as bearers of hope who learned, at last, to walk in the world's light. The saga was theirs to shape, a tapestry stretched forever onward, where love outlasted even the shadow of death. The days that followed were golden with relief, yet beneath each joy lurked uncertainty. Brynjar and Vilda settled briefly in Skelvik, which rose anew from the ashes, a village rebuilt in stone, fear exchanged for hope. Their story became legend, and the songs carried them from firesides to the lips of wandering skalds. But Eilif's warning haunted them. With the Draugr-King gone, others stirred, old powers, new hungers. On the night of the autumn equinox, the moon turned the fjord silver, and a gathering of strangers arrived at the village gate. There were 7 wanderers, misfits, some marked plainly by fate. The eldest, Helga Ironhand, wore armor etched with sigils of vanished clans. Next, a youth named Ulfr, whose dreams prophesied disaster. Then, twins from the southern forests, their laughter wild and knowing. Their names, Tyra and Torin meant thunder and dawn. A priestess called Astrid bore a staff carved from Yggdrasil's fallen branch, and the final two, a merchant with clever eyes and a mute hunter who could speak with wolves, stood silent but watchful. "We come for the saga," Helga said. "Your song called to us. Something is coming, and we must stand together or perish alone." Brynjar felt the runestone grow warm in his palm. Each new companion echoed some lost part of himself. Courage, fear, prophecy, kinship, faith, cunning, and instinct. The seven joined Brynjar and Vilda by the fire, sharing tales of distant storms and rumors of creatures older than history, newly awakened. That night, Astrid's dreams led them to the roots of the ash trees, where the boundaries of worlds had grown thin. Here, the group formed a vow to defend the realm, whatever darkness threatened, and to bind themselves as kin no matter the cost. In the morning, Vilda found a trail of frost outside her window. The gods were watching, and not all for good fortune. Chapter 7. The Tide of Fate. Winter came swift, its bite sharper for those who remembered loss. Skelvik braced against the cold, but Brynjar's band traveled to the edge of the world, intent on finding what Eilif called the Heart of Shadows, a place where forgotten spirits clustered and the gods weighed mortal resolve. The road was perilous. Astrid's staff revealed paths through snowdrifts and blinding hail, while Helga clashed with ice wraiths in the mountain passes. Ulfr's dreams turned darker. Each night, he warned of tragedy in riddles. Tyra and Torin brought laughter, their tricks lifting spirits as the cold grew treacherous. At length, they reached a hidden valley veiled with mist. In its heart stood a stone archway inscribed with 3 words that pulsed with power: loss, love, destiny. Beyond the arch lay a spiral of obsidian steps, each step resonating with their pasts, the pain, mistakes, sacrifices, and triumphs. Helga knelt and pressed her hand to the stone. "We ascend, not for ourselves, but for those yet unborn, for all who wish to choose hope over despair." One by one, the party climbed the spiral. Their fears manifested, dark shapes clawing from the shadows, regrets that howled for surrender, unfinished wounds demanding the price of memory. The runestone burned fierce in Brynjar's pouch, and as he raised it high, a light flared. The darkness recoiled, and for a moment, time paused. At the spiral's peak, Yggdrasil's root emerged, alive, ancient, bearing fruits of gold and shadow. The companions stood in the radiance, eyes open to the world's tapestry. A voice boomed from the root, at once motherly and fierce. "You have carried loss and remade it as hope. Now, mortals, speak your wishes, and fate will answer." Brynjar spoke first. "Let the restless find peace. Let hope outlast sorrow." Vilda followed, and so did each companion in turn. Their words braided through air and story, and the world itself seemed to shiver with promise. In a final cascade of aurora and thunder, the Heart of Shadows crystallized into song, a saga that would endure, kindling new strength wherever it was told. They descended together, bound forever by trials overcome and the light they forged anew. The gods watched and smiled. The end of the saga, 7 parts complete. The tale of Brynjar, Vilda, and their newfound kin would echo in every hall, every heart that clung to love after loss. So it ended, not in sorrow but in devotion, proof that courage, when shared, could mend even the deepest wounds and shape destiny for generations. In the years that followed, Skelvik flourished. The story of Brynjar, Vilda, and their 7 companions became the heartbeat of the village, a saga sung at every festival, whispered at every bedside when fear of the dark crept near. The villagers rebuilt more than their homes. They rebuilt their spirits. Where once loss had ruled, now unity and hope took root. Brynjar and Vilda each found their path. Brynjar became the sage of the valley, always ready to guide wandering souls to light, keeper of the runestone and teller of hard-won truths. He never forgot the price of a memory, nor the miracles born from sacrifice. Some said he could speak to ravens, and that sometimes, on moonless nights, he wandered alone beneath the ash trees, humming the melody he'd heard among the roots of Yggdrasil. Vilda, once restless, became a teacher of restless hearts. She taught the children of Skelvik not only the skills of their people, but the courage to face shadows unafraid, and the grace needed to forgive even those who'd wandered longest in darkness. Her laughter rang with sorrow and sunlight intertwined, a song of everything she had been and all she chose to become. Their companions, too, found their legacies. Astrid built a sanctuary where those lost in grief could find peace and wisdom beneath the boughs of Yggdrasil's saplings. Ulfr's visions foretold advances and perils, though he learned, finally, to choose his own path regardless of portents. Helga Ironhand became a legend among warriors. Tyra and Torrin's mischief turned into festival games that kept winters warm. The merchant's cleverness protected the trade routes for years, and the mute hunter's bond with wolves ensured the village never lacked for guidance or friendship in the wilds. With each season, the Heart of Shadows grew into a place of pilgrimage. The obsidian spiral became smooth with the footsteps of the hopeful. Fruits of gold and shadow continued to grow on that route, tokens of the world's balance, loss and love, fear and bravery, night and dawn. It was here, beneath the rippling lights of another aurora, that Brynjar at last returned in old age, Vilda by his side. They found the valley quiet and beautiful, the saga carved upon the stones in a dozen languages, proof that all who passed this way had become a part of the tapestry. When at last Brynjar and Vilda walked together into legend, the wind carried their names, much as it once did the story of another brother and sister, another night of flames and hope. And so the saga lives, in every heart that chooses to remember. Love survives the darkness, loss can birth light, and the story is never truly over, so long as someone dares to sing.